Okay, we are recording. Let me just give a moment here. I'm going to share my screen. Can Scott or Alan give me a thumbs up if you can see that slide well?
We're good.
Awesome. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Meredith Warner. I am a UCM board member and also the organizer of the Racial Justice Group. And today I'm here speaking on behalf of the board about a proposed air quality project that the COVID-19 task force has recommended to our executive team and to our board. The COVID task force has presented reopening guidelines for our church building as we emerge from the pandemic. And in phase 2 of the guidelines requires the implementation of an air quality project, which we're going to learn more about today. And we'll share why these recommendations are being made and what might need to happen to follow through on the proposed project. Let's see, I'm going to go to the next slide. So the values that guide the project are our Unitarian Universalist values and principles of welcoming and inclusion. I think that's probably the most essential. Of course, well-being, respect for science, and protecting the most vulnerable among us. Of course, we all love being in community in our building together, and we want to resume those in-person activities. And so what we are proposing today seeks to strike a balance to discern how we might resume our shared life in church, but also to live into that value of inclusivity, of health and well-being and respect for science, and protecting those who are most vulnerable among us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alan Clark, who is going to share some details about how and why this project might go forward. Thanks, Alan.
Video. I don't care. Hi, I'm Alan Clark, and good morning. I'm on the ad hoc air quality project team with Barbara Conray and Paul Olson. I'm also on the property committee, and I've been a UCM member for about 4 years. Next slide, please. Oh, do I have to do that? So what do we know about COVID transmission? The primary thing is that it comes in by the air we breathe. I'm sure you remember early on that everybody was wiping all the surfaces and doing everything else. And it's really, the transmission route is really through the air we breathe. And to make it worse, the variants that are emerging appear to be more easily transmitted. And so having it come through the air is a greater problem. All the standard things about masks, social distancing, personal hygiene, vaccinations, and good air filtration are critical to reduce the risk of infection. And being outside provides better air quality than being in a building. Okay, next, please. How do we make a building healthier? Well, we need outdoor makeup air coming into the building to kind of dilute out the air that's already in the building. We need better air filtration of any air that's circulating through the building. And there are guidelines at CDC, at the EPA, and at the state of Vermont that all help us with how do we do this better filtration and outside makeup air. So on the next slide, how healthy is the air in our building? It's not very healthy. We don't have the systems in place to make really, truly healthy air. The COVID-19 task force has spent months following the progression of the pandemic. They've been reviewing the various guidelines and the government recommendations about keeping us all safe. Masking, distancing, vaccinations are all critical, and so is air quality. The more the task force learned about the importance of air quality and the lack of ventilation, the more they realized we need to address air quality to keep us all safe. The sanctuary and the vestry, kitchen, fireplace room, and so forth have 2 hot air furnaces and And these systems do not utilize any makeup air, and they do not have adequate filtration. The same air in the building just recirculates over and over and over. The 1984 edition, which is classrooms and offices, uses baseboard heating. So there's no air recirculation, no ventilation, and no air filtration. So on the next slide, we have a very simplified schematic that shows the existing heating system for the sanctuary and vestry. The air comes down from the upper parts of the building into the furnace and goes right back up. It just recirculates and recirculates and recirculates. No outside air is introduced and no indoor air is replaced. 0 outdoor exchanges per hour is the number people look at. And we didn't really know better, so the air filter in the furnace is inadequate. And so that's going to be part of the solution. And because there's no outdoor air coming in, the levels of carbon dioxide can also increase in the occupied spaces. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what is being proposed. CX Associates is an engineering firm in Burlington and has visited our building, evaluated our building systems, and provided some preliminary recommendations for improving air quality. Their report is on the UCM website. Unfortunately, asbestos has been identified on the existing ducts, and we need to, what they call, abate it. We need to either completely encase it or we need to remove it. And if we remove it, we need new ducts to be designed and built. And we feel that removing the ducts is the most practical way to get rid of the asbestos because there's so much. And then we'll need to add heat recovery ventilation units to provide energy efficient methods to get outdoor air in and to remove the indoor air. So on the next slide, for those of you who haven't spent any time in the basement, this is just a picture of some of the asbestos hanging from the ductwork in the basement. And you can see that it certainly needs to be taken care of. And many contractors have told us they will not work on this heating system until the asbestos has been removed. For your information, OSHA and EPA regulate the asbestos removal, and the state registers the people who do it. So we're quite comfortable that when we hire somebody to come in and take care of it, it will be done in a very appropriate way. And then the air will be tested to make sure there are no asbestos fibers left. So in the next slide, we see the proposed ventilation system, where on the right-hand side, you can see outside air coming in and then exhaust air going out. So that's where we bring in the fresh air to the furnace. And where those two exhaust and outside air cross, you'll see something called a heat exchanger. And that helps if the outside air is, say, 30 degrees and the inside air is 68 degrees, we recover from some of the heat, about 85% of the heat that's going out, to help warm the outside air before it goes into the furnace. And then in the furnace, we've drawn a little sketch of a better filter. They call them MERV 13 filters. And that would help remove much of the aerosols that people have in their breath and that might contain the viruses. And the current plan is to turn over the air in the system about 4 times per hour to put that much fresh air into the vestry and the sanctuary. And if we don't need heat, we would put new controllers on the furnaces so that it would continue to recirculate the air that we need recirculating without supplying any heat. And of course, if we add air conditioning at some future point, the whole system works for that also. And you would start this system up a couple hours before service, for instance, and let it run for a couple hours just to leave everything in good, clean, the air in good, clean condition. The project also addresses the addition, which has no furnace like this, so there's no recirculating air, and we would have to basically solve the problem of good quality air using outside air and exhausting air through these heat recovery ventilation units that I've sort of described. And this whole system is really not new news to us. It was part of the Building for the Future project, the BFF. So the question then becomes on the next slide, the timing. The project's very complex. We have to have multiple contractors involved because one contractor for the asbestos, another for one for the design, one for the some of the construction. And so the design needs to be developed and approved before contractors can bid on the project. There's currently stiff competition for contractors and for materials because so much of the ventilation work is being done here in Vermont and across the country, and in fact across the world. Fortunately here, the competition should lighten up by late summer, and contractors can be, because most of the work is being done on schools in Vermont, and therefore the materials and contractors will start to become available. And once the project starts, we should be able to be completed in 2 to 3 months, we believe. But just on part of the timing, we cannot remove the asbestos until the ducts have been designed and either manufactured, or we trust that they'll be scheduled for manufacture. And then we have hired the contractor to install the new ducts. And so, you know, the question, and I know many of you have already heard this, that the project estimate is that it will cost up to about 200, and the next slide, please, up to about $250,000. And that includes the design work of $40,000 for ducts and the heat recovery ventilation system. And it also includes some aid to us in terms of managing the project and for testing the final installation to make sure that in fact everything works the way it was designed to work. So far, we've already received estimates from a couple of companies for asbestos control, asbestos abatement, and we have scheduled at least one more meeting for other contractors to get a sense of when they can do it and how much it would cost. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Scott, who is will handle the financial issues. Scott is the chair of the COVID task force. He's the co-chair of the finance committee. And most importantly, he's the head chef at the community lunch. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Alan. In semi-retirement right now. Yes, thank you for joining us. Along with Dan Groberg, I'm like co-chair of the finance committee. And really the essence here is time is of the essence. Under normal circumstances, we would think about having a capital campaign, spreading out, which we had talked about potentially for the BFF, but we don't have enough time for that. Not that that can't be an integral part of this, but for the most part, it would have to come over of the LTIF, which is the long-term investment fund, which I'll explain in just a minute. The other potential component, because it's an old building, because there's air quality issues, there are some potential grants that we can apply for. And that process is already underway to investigate those various options. But because this needs to happen quickly, the board has authorized taking out of the long-term investment fund, the LTIF, $250,000. And on the next slide, what exactly is that? That's our endowment fund. Most nonprofits, organizations have this type of fund, and it's usually a mix of fixed income, bonds, primarily equities or stocks, and probably some cash too. It's a professionally managed fund, As of the end of April, we had a 1.1, a little over $1.1 million. And legally, or what we have to withdraw at least 5% a year. We have been traditionally taking out 4%, and this long-term investment fund is used primarily for capital improvements in the building, and that's where Paul Olson's group, for the facilities and for the management of the physical building. And on the next slide, we're talking about it's professionally managed. The finance committee, the treasurer, has meetings with our professional advisor, and obviously it's done quite well. On the next slide, I think we can see what the performance has been, and that's because obviously the equity market has, with some dips and the stock market going up and down, has performed quite handily. And it's not 100% in stocks and equities, but primarily it is. So 22% of the $1.13 million endowment or long-term investment fund would be withdrawn for that. Potentially could be a little less if we receive some grants and or if we have a bit of a capital campaign. And I think that's about it from my perspective. I'm going to hand it back to Meredith, and I think we're going to see if you guys have any questions. But thank you, and we're here now and in the future. If you don't get your question answered now or something else comes up, please reach out to any of us in the future. We're here to answer those for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks, Alan. I want to thank everybody that's participated in the process of understanding what we're hoping to do together. Just a lot of thoughtful discernment about kind of what the environment of the pandemic is. You know, a lot of the one consistency is that everything's always kind of a moving target, and I think that's something that's really important to understand, and that everybody's really been doing their best to kind of live into our UU values as we think about how to be back together again. I also want to just acknowledge that all this information it's a lot to hear. Some of it's really hard to hear. Some of it feels well beyond some of our understanding. And you know, also that many of us have already received a vaccine, and we are starting to kind of move towards our pre-pandemic activities, you know, edging towards what normal life looked like before this crisis. But there are beloved friends among us at UCM who aren't going back so easily for a whole host of reasons. And despite our strong desire to be together, we are, you know, just committed to inclusion in this moment, to come to a decision together that makes sure that no one gets left out of our return together. One moment. Mute somebody. So like I said, just really being sure that no one is left out of our return to shared worship and shared service. So our building can be made considerably safer for ourselves and for our guests to lower the risk of aerosolized diseases like COVID-19 if we choose to follow through on this project. And I'm speaking as a board member here, that while it's been a little over 100 years since the last pandemic, experts are already warning that the next pandemic will be here sooner than we hope it would. And this proposal is really an investment in the future members of this congregation. So what do we do next? You know, as Alan mentioned, there's a time frame here that feels really challenging, and we're hoping to use the coming weeks to do some collective discernment about how to pass through this moment and get to a place where we can be together again. And the board is offering times to be together in conversation. This presentation is being recorded and will be shared out, and we hope that following time together on Zoom will be just in question and answer. We're really vested in hearing from all of you. You have great ideas about how to get through this time together. And we want to know what those are, and hear from one another about what to do. So we've got these 3 weeks of events coming up, leading to what will be a congregational vote on June 6th, a special meeting that will be held to discuss a vote to use the portion of the long-term investment fund for this particular project. The next event will be Sunday, May 30th. That's next week at coffee hour, where we hope you'll all come back again and we can speak together about this project. And also just want to offer that the website's been updated. I'll add a few links to the chat after we start the Q&A, but you should check the COVID-19 updates page. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll see a blue box with a kind of swirly air pattern in it that says Air Quality Project. If you click on that link, you'll land on the Air Quality Project page that has lots of information about how this decision has been discerned, or how this proposal has been discerned. We also have coming up a live interview. Joan's going to interview some UCM board members to talk about the Air Quality Project. That will be live on Facebook on May 24th. It's okay if you're not a Facebook user. You just go to the UCM homepage and you can scroll down to the Facebook widget and just watch it directly there. So you don't have to be a Facebook user to watch it. We'll also record that and share it out for more information. I'd really encourage you to check out the FAQs that have been put together. Those are frequently asked questions. We're also going to take some of your questions from today, and we're going to add more questions and answers there as we go through this process, so that we can be sure that we're consistently learning and sharing. And then last, there's also a ucm.reopening@gmail.com email address. If you want to direct a question towards the group of people who have been supporting this decision making, that's a great place to send a direct question that we can, put it to the right person to answer it for you. I'm going to go ahead now at this point, and I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to